The village of Amara lay nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, where the red moon cast its glow only once every 10 years. For generations, the villagers believed that under its light, promises made in love carried the blessing of eternity. Kofi, a young farmer with strong hands and a gentle spirit, had found his greatest treasure in Abeni. She was the kind of woman whose laughter carried like a song, weaving joy into the lives of all who heard it. The two were inseparable, their love a flame that burned brightly even in the simplest moments, like when Kofi carved wooden figurines for Abeni, or when she sang to him under the stars. One evening, as the village prepared for the Red Moon Festival, Kofi stood with Abeni. The trees swayed softly in the wind, and the moon, vast and crimson, began to rise. "It's beautiful," Abeni whispered, her hand in his. "Not as beautiful as you," Kofi replied, his voice low but filled with sincerity. She laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever fear that something will take this away from us? That life will separate us somehow?" Kofi turned to her, his brows furrowed. "Nothing will ever separate us. Not life, not death. I'll love you even beyond this world." Abeni smiled, but her eyes carried a shadow of worry. "Then promise me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Promise me that even if I leave this world, you'll wait for me. I'll find my way back to you, Kofi. I swear it." "I promise," Kofi said, holding her hands tightly. "But don't speak of leaving, Abeni. You're my heart. Without you, there's no me." The festival was a blur of music and laughter, but Kofi and Abeni only had eyes for each other. They danced beneath the red moon, their hearts beating as one. The joy of the night was short-lived. Abeni fell ill just weeks after the festival. Her vibrant energy faded, replaced by a frailty that Kofi could barely recognize. He stayed by her side, doing everything he could, offering herbal remedies, praying to the spirits, even begging the village healer for help. But nothing worked. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kofi sat beside Abeni on their mat. She was too weak to speak, but she managed a small smile when she saw him. "Don't forget," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll come back. I promise." Tears streamed down Kofi's face as he held her hand. "I won't forget, Abeni. I'll wait for you." With one last breath, Abeni closed her eyes, her face serene. Kofi felt his world shatter in an instant. The entire village mourned her passing. Abeni was buried beneath a sacred baobab tree, a place where spirits were said to linger before crossing into the afterlife. Kofi visited her grave daily, speaking to her as if she were still there. The days turned into weeks, then months. The pain remained, but life moved forward, pulling Kofi along with it. It took years for Kofi to smile again. His family and friends gently encouraged him to find companionship, but he resisted. No one could replace Abeni. However, when a kind and understanding woman named Afua came into his life, something shifted. Afua wasn't Abeni. Her laughter was quieter, her hands rougher from years of hard work. But she was patient with Kofi, never pushing him to forget his past. Slowly, she helped him heal. They married in a simple ceremony, and in time they had 2 children. Nia, whose curiosity mirrored her father's, and Kojo, a quiet boy with a gentle spirit. Kofi loved his new family fiercely, though he never stopped visiting Abeni's grave, where he whispered the words he could no longer say aloud. "I'll always love you." In a village far from Kofi's, under another red moon, a baby girl named Zola was born. From the moment she could speak, Zola was unlike other children. She sang songs no one had taught her, spoke of places she had never been, and had vivid dreams of a man named Kofi. Her parents, frightened by her strange behavior, sought the village elder's wisdom. The elder listened carefully to Zola's stories and declared, "This child carries the spirit of someone who has loved and lost. Her memories are not her own." As Zola grew, the memories became sharper. By the time she was a young woman, she was certain of her past life as Abeni. The dreams became a call she could no longer ignore. "I must find him," she told her parents. I made a promise, and I must keep it." Reluctantly, they let her go, and Zola set out on her journey. Zola traveled for weeks, crossing rivers, forests, and villages, guided only by the fragments of memories that felt like whispers in her soul. Each step brought her closer to the man she knew only in dreams but loved deeply in a way that felt eternal. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and crimson, Zola reached a small village. It was a humble place with fields of millet swaying in the breeze and smoke curling from thatched roofs. Something about it stirred her heart. She had never been here before, yet it felt like coming home. Zola asked the villagers about Kofi, describing his kind eyes and gentle smile. Many pointed her to a man who lived near the baobab tree. When she arrived, she saw him. Kofi was older now, his once black hair streaked with gray, but his posture was strong and his movements were steady. He stood in the doorway of his home, watching as a woman, his wife Afua, prepared a meal near the fire. Nearby, 2 grown children laughed as they worked in the field. Zola froze, her heart pounding. This was the man she had traveled so far to find, the man she had promised to return to. But now he had a new life, a new family. As if sensing her presence, Kofi turned. Their eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice warm but cautious. Zola took a step closer. "It's me," she said softly. "It's Abeni." Kofi's expression faltered, confusion clouding his face. "What did you say?" "I've come back, as I promised," Zola said. Her voice trembled and tears welled in her eyes. "I am Abeni. I know you may not believe me, but I remember everything, the songs we sang, the vows we made under the red moon. You buried me beneath the baobab tree, and I promised I would return to you." Kofi stared at her, his breath catching. The way she spoke, the way her voice lilted, it was impossibly familiar, yet it couldn't be true. "I don't understand," he said finally. "You don't have to," Zola replied, stepping closer. "But it's me, Kofi. I kept my promise. I came back to you." For days, Zola stayed in the village, trying to explain herself. She recounted moments only Abeni could have known. The time Kofi carved her a wooden bird, the exact words of the song she used to sing. She even described the night of the Red Moon Festival, down to the bracelets they had exchanged. Kofi began to believe, against all logic, that she might be telling the truth. But her return brought not only wonder but also anguish. Afua was kind and understanding, but her pain was evident. One evening, she approached Zola while Kofi was visiting Abeni's grave. "You love him," Afua said quietly. "I do," Zola admitted, her voice heavy with emotion. "I loved him in a life before this one, and I love him still. I promise to return to him." "And what do you expect him to do?" Afua asked, her tone neither angry nor bitter. "Leave the family he built? Abandon the children who depend on him? You've kept your promise, but at what cost to him?" Zola had no answer. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the truth in Afua's words. That night, Kofi asked Zola to meet him by the baobab tree. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting long shadows on the ground. "I've thought about everything you've said," Kofi began. His voice was steady, but his eyes were filled with sorrow. "And I believe you, Abeni. Somehow I know it's you." Zola's heart leaped with hope, but Kofi continued. "But I cannot turn my back on the life I've built. Afua has been my rock, my partner through years of joy and hardship. My children are my heart now. I love you and I always will, but my promise is to them now." Zola's breath hitched, but she nodded. "I understand. I never meant to hurt you or your family. I only wanted to keep my promise." "You have," Kofi said, taking her hands. "You've kept your promise, and now you must find peace. Abeni, you gave me so much love in our time together, and I will carry that love with me forever, but we cannot go back." The next morning, Zola prepared to leave the village. Before she departed, she visited Abeni's grave beneath the baobab tree. She knelt by the soil, her tears soaking into the earth. As she wept, a soft breeze stirred the leaves, and she felt a presence around her. In her mind, she heard Abeni's voice, not her own, but the woman she once was. "Thank you for returning, my spirit. But your journey is not to reclaim the past. It is to live a new life, free of old promises. Be happy as I once was." Zola wiped her tears and rose. She turned her back on the grave and walked away, her heart heavy but her steps steady. In the years that followed, Zola became a renowned storyteller in her own village, weaving tales of love, loss, and the Red Moon. Though she never married, she found fulfillment in sharing her stories and teaching others the beauty of letting go. Kofi, too, found peace. He visited Abeni's grave one last time, placing a carved wooden bird on the soil. "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching me how to love and for teaching me how to heal." As he walked away, the red moon rose once more, its glow a reminder of love's enduring power and the strength to let go.